Okay, guys. Well, as promised, I'm bringing you more library CEOs this year on this YouTube channel. And this is Ed Scott of Dodge the Bullet Music. Ed recently commented on one of my LinkedIn posts, and I was talking about the fact that good enough production music really doesn't fly anymore. If you had come into this industry 15, 20 years ago, probably could get away with decent, average, whatever music that could probably get a lot of placements. But as my career has gone on, and I think especially since the pandemic, the quality of production music and the requirements, the minimum standards that we are needing to meet have only been getting higher and higher and higher. So as I shared that on LinkedIn, Ed commented on my post and confirmed that to say, I absolutely agree. I have very, very high standards. I expect excellence from the music that I'm going to potentially bring into my catalog. And Dodge the Bullet is a major player in our business. So if you want to hear directly from a CEO on how he evaluates music and how he decides which tracks he actually accepts, this would be an interview you don't want to skip. So, Ed, thank you so much for joining us today, man. Give us a little
Yeah,
backstory on your history with Sync and Dodge the Bullet, if you don't mind.
yeah, sure. Well, my background is actually TV. I worked in TV for many years. I launched maybe 20 TV channels over the years. I think probably one of the biggest ones I did was I did the launch campaign for ESPN in the UK. But I've launched everything from music channels, movie channels, everything pretty much. I relaunched the national ITV News at 10 program. So we've done an awful lot over the years. And one thing which I've worked out is that when the music comes through from, well, it was CDs back in the day when I was using it, so that shows my age, you would very much find that you need to think outside the box. So when I was going to the music listening room, there'd be thousands of CDs all around you, and you've got maybe, I don't know, half an hour to source your music, and then you'll write the script. So you've got to be very aware that often the tracks which come in, like say it's a movie promo for an action weekend, but you've got a particular angle. You might find that the music which is sent through is not particularly right for you. So I might grab, say, 10, 15, 20 CDs, and I listen quite literally to the first 3 seconds. People might say, hang on, you're not giving the track enough. But I know from what I want, I know that if the track is constructed properly, within the first 3 seconds, you should get past any drum fill or anything to start the track out, and you should literally start hearing the melody pretty much instantly. So, I will know if it's instantly right or if it's worth listening to a little bit more. Um, so I know what music works. I know what music doesn't work, and I also know that the industry has moved on so much that you have to keep the quality at a crazily high level. Um, for instance, the cost of having a license to have commercial music on TV is very, very expensive. But there's no taking away that there's big benefits when you use vocal tracks. So as a result, a lot of the broadcasters want vocal tracks for their library projects. Now we do a lot of vocal tracks, but we're really careful in what we invest our time, effort, money, and energy into. So we have done quite a few big hip hop albums, which were produced in the US, which TNT have been using in the UK. And our reps in the US, Diner, they love that kind of stuff. So we're just delivering what people are going to use. There's no point in me commissioning stuff if I'm thinking to myself, it might work, but I'm really not sure. I've got to be confident. But my background in TV means that I know this. If I would use it, then I know this. It's worth commissioning, and I've got to think outside the box as well. So, for instance, um, say I do an album of, I don't know, say synthwave. Where can we place it now? Synthwave, it's great. It can get used for general trailers. It can get used for daytime. We had a TV commercial in the US for Investor Tech, and that used a synthwave track. So it's literally you've got to have multiple uses. If you've got something which is just so narrowly focused, and those projects don't come up all the time, then it's gathering digital dust, which nobody wants. And then the composer will start saying, "Why am I not getting used?" So you've got to be quite realistic and honest sometimes when people give you things which are so specific. I remember a few years ago, I was offered an album of Middle Eastern music, and it was great. For legal reasons, I'm not going to explain why I didn't take the album, but it was good. However, my day-to-day general client work would not want that. Um, but equally, sometimes projects come through. Like right now, we're working with a major ad agency for a project which requires authentic um, Aboriginal music from Australia. That's authentic. They literally are narrowing it down to a particular tribe. So that's probably going to be something which we spend quite a bit of time and effort just to get it right, because this is, when people are that specific, which with what they want, which ad agencies are very specific, as opposed to general TV, which perhaps they might want to say a general theme, but advertising, they normally are very, very honed in on a very, very specific tone or an idea. So you've got to be a little bit more. You've got to give them what they ask for. It's not really the sort of project where you give them a wild card, because they've already done their research. They know they've spoken to music supervisors. They've had internal meetings. They know precisely what they want. So yeah, that's my background on why we do what we do in a particular way, and we've got some really high-end composers, which I've got over 100 composers working for me right now. So I don't need to chase people. It's got to a point that my inbox, my submissions folder, it's frequently filled with hundreds and hundreds of people. I don't mean that in a bad way. I do apologise to people, but unfortunately, you always have to deal with ongoing projects, ongoing composers. I don't ever really need to search for composers anymore, because we've got this reputation. Like we've got Jim Dooley, who did Gladiator with Hans Zimmer, Pirates of the Caribbean. He did The Simpsons. We've also got Simon May, who did the EastEnders theme, which it's the most recognisable piece of music according to PRS, ahead of the national anthem in the UK. It had its 40th anniversary last week in the UK. We've got Dan McGrath, who did what we call it Strictly Come Dancing. In the US, it's called Dancing with the Stars. It's that thing. So we've got quite a wide range of really big composers. And we tend to find that they bring their friends on board. We have recommendations. Like we've got Andrew Johnson, who does he's doing a lot of stuff with Disney in the US on a Star Wars spin-off. We've got Mike Barnett, who does Cocomelon TV for Netflix. So all these people, because they're like working with us, they recommend us to other people. So it becomes very, very organic, and as a result, it's a painless process. And I think recommendation is always the best way to work with people. We were speaking before we started recording about Yella. Yella's a great friend, and we work together an awful lot. We speak on WhatsApp several times a day, and he's even coming to stay in 2 weeks' time. So if you get on with people, it makes life so much easier. The trust is there, and people don't mind when you're critical about the tracks. I'm sure Yellow won't mind me telling you this, but when we were working on an album of horror tracks, I had a very specific idea in mind. I wanted them very, trailer driven, promo driven, very with a hard edge. And the first tracks which came through were great, but they were just not right for what I wanted. And when I brief tracks, I always give very clear references, either a written description, or I might find a track from another library saying, this is in the style what we want. Obviously we don't want that track, but you can see what we're trying to, what we're trying to market here, because it is a marketing business. It's not a music business. I keep telling people this, and people need to understand that my job is to get the music to the right people in the right places. So I need to be very, very focused on what I'm commissioning, because I need to target it to the right people. Anyway, these tracks which Yella gave me, they were absolutely wonderful, but they were just not on the brief which I wanted, and um, rejected them all. And yeah, Yella probably was initially a bit pissed off, but who isn't? And reworked the tracks, and well, one of them won a Mark Award back in October. So had that not happened, had I not pushed back on them, then we wouldn't have won the Mark Award. So I think sometimes it's important to actually keep your standards high, and I think that's definitely been the case.
Absolutely. There are so many gems in what you just said. That was a beautiful answer, and I wish I could remember all of them. I'm going to do my best. One is you're coming at this industry from a very unique standpoint that you were launching TV channels. I don't think I've ever met a CEO from a library that had a backstory that they were launching the TV channel themselves and then moving into production music. So it sounds like you have some very unique insights as to how a TV station operates, what their needs are, how programming works, and you really have an intimate knowledge of basically how to make life easier for people on the TV network side and people that are putting together this content and broadcasting it. So that's really interesting that you're bringing that skill set to the table with Dodge the Bullet. But you also said something about, within the first 3 seconds, and it's actually a common that for some reason 3 seconds. I've heard it from a variety of different library owners. I also say it myself when I'm reviewing music, is it's like you can tell quality within a couple of seconds. And the people that say, well, you didn't give my track enough of a chance, you shouldn't have to. I agree with you. 3 seconds, and if you are pulled into it, there's something there that's going to be quality that will demand your attention within 3 seconds.
I hate to say it, but library music, it's formulaic. Mm. Which, a lot of people who are very creative don't like to be told that. But when I onboard my composers, I send a briefing document listing everything and how we work, how the naming procedures of folders, and the bit rates and sample rates, all that kind of stuff. And I also have a diagram which shows the breakdown of the main mix, the 60-second, the 30-second, and the sting, because people don't always understand how tracks are created, and the fact that if you're going to do a 30-second version, you can't have a 10-second introduction. You can't start to fade at 26 seconds. Now you can put a fill in for the first second and a half, but that's kind of it. You need to get to the melody pretty damn soon for a 30-second. For 60, you can have maybe 5 or 6 seconds of something. If you want to start being creative, that's what the main mix is for. But even then, you can't go too wild. You got to look at how you got. What I often try to say to rookie composers is try to look at the music in situ. Say, for instance, if you're doing a vocal track, try and see. An example, let's say reality TV, they use a lot of vocal tracks on that. There's no 30-second introduction. There might be maybe 2 or 3 seconds, but they'll get straight to the vocals, because when they're being used on air, nobody cares about a long introduction. And if they need to add something, then they'll just snip something from the instrumental version and tag it at the front. So I think it's really important to understand how things are used, because I'm often just selling people old promos, which I did, saying, right, this is a 60-second version. You can hear how there's a little bit of a build up in the music. This is the 30-second version, and the 30-second version starts dead on the music, dead on the hook. And when you're looking at the end, I don't know what's if I said the word the promo end page. Would you understand what I'm saying by here? If I said the promo end page, so say you've got your promo which is 30 seconds long, and then at 26 seconds your graphic will come on screen saying Family Guy, Sunday 8 p.m. Fox streaming live on whatever, fox.com. So that usually comes in around about 25, 26 seconds. So therefore, when I'm looking to punctuate a music track, it's very useful to have your end, your closing part of the track round about 25, 26 seconds, because it works with the voiceover, it works with the graphics, things like that. And when it's in the edit suite, the editor will be thinking about this when they're putting the track together. So they're looking for an obvious point of when they can finish their promo or finish the commercial. And if you've got a nice obvious out point at 26 seconds where he goes da, 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 that is the point where they can put their end frame graphic. So if you obviously not every single piece of music works like that, especially when it comes to say piano tracks where you'll have say 5 or 6 notes in that final 5 seconds. But at the same time, when you're looking at a promo track or a commercial track, there needs to be a point where the graphics come on there. And if you can think like a creative, if you can think like if I was a TV editor, where would that come in? So I'm always thinking about it from a TV standpoint. When I get briefs from clients, I actually really enjoy it because I'm thinking, okay, if I was doing your job, what would I be thinking? So I'm often given the actual briefs, which they are given from their bosses, with the complete breakdown of target markets, when's it on air, when's it being filmed, what options we want, is it going, the age, all that kind of stuff. So I'm thinking in my mind, I know their target. So once I've got in mind what they're trying to do, I can start giving them 5 or 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 tracks. And I'll know in a heartbeat if we've got it just from reading their brief. And sometimes we don't, because we've been going 2.5 years right now. So there's only so much content you can do. Like, for instance, last week I was speaking to a movie trailer, a music supervisor, and they wanted some thriller tracks with actual breathing in it. And I thought, I don't have any, but that's a really good idea. So I've made a note that next time I commission some thriller tracks, I'm going to make sure we put some breathing in, because that is great for those sort of tension tracks. And I'm sure there's plenty out there on other libraries, but I've not come across any. But I just thought it's a really good idea. So when people come to me with ideas which we don't have, I put it onto my request list, and I've got a really big request list of things right now.
Very smart. Yeah. And I think what is really cool about your approach here is that you're obviously coming to it with a service mindset of really empathetically thinking, what is my client looking for? And if I were that client and I was going to open up an email with some music options, what would brighten up my day and make me feel so excited and really solve a lot of my problems instantly without even having to ask for more changes or whatever. So it sounds like that, empathy first, service first mindset really has served you well in the business. And I try to also encourage everybody watching this, if you're a producer or composer, you got to have that same thought process as you approach production music libraries, that it's not about you, it's about serving the clients, about making sure that you're making music that can be marketed and licensable. So I guess I want to ask you this, this is kind of like a big $1 million question that a lot of producers and composers are going to want to know as a result of having you here on the channel, is when they're approaching you and they're putting together their best, maybe it's 3-5 tracks that they think this is a really good representation of what I can bring to the table. What is your North Star and your system of judging music? Is it mostly just quality no matter the style? Are there certain styles that you tend to go for more? Are there certain unique original approaches to music that really capture your ear more than others? What is it that kind of like helps you decide which particular tracks you're going to bring on or not?
Well, before I actually come to answering that question directly, if you don't mind, I would like to slightly go back and actually talk about the whole process of contacting people. Because before we even get to listening to the tracks, there's the idea of just how do you get in contact with people. Now, I get a lot of people who send messages on LinkedIn, absolutely fine, but I very quickly try to direct them to emails. The reason is it's a lot easier for me to search. And, I'm working on, I've got several hundred tracks in production right now. So it's very easy to forget who's doing what, And as a result, with email, very, very easy to search things. So that's the first thing. And then secondly, when I get the emails, it ranges. It's normally one of um, two options. Normally, number one is it's a hi, I want to do some music for you with a link, and that's it. The other one is a massive long page with loads of links, loads of album links, and this, that, all the other. And that option, I don't have time to read. I literally, what I want to know is number one, how good are you? Number two, where shall I put you in my list of composers? And that's really difficult because most people say I can do everything, which doesn't help me because I've got 20, 30 albums which on my commissioning list, my to-do list. I'm thinking, well, where do I put you? So, for instance, as we were explaining early on, there's a big trend with vocal tracks. So, can you do vocal tracks? Um, if the answer is, well, no, I don't sing, well, could you team up with somebody else who can sing? Because there's so many libraries when it comes to genres, all the major um, labels certainly are putting vocal tracks first in key genres, be it hip hop, dance, pop, rock. So as a result, that's a very, very important aspect. And then, so how good are you? What can you do? And then thirdly, are you experienced in library? Now, I know a lot of people watching this channel are not widely experienced in library, which is fine. I totally understand that we will have to start in certain places. However, if you come to the table and you say that you are experienced, then I know that I don't need to spend an awful lot of time explaining the absolute basics to you. Things like construction of the edits, things like it has to be exactly 30 seconds. Don't give me 28 seconds. Don't give me 32 seconds. Give me 30 seconds. Things like don't click the start. Make sure your samples are world class. There's no excuse in 2025 to have poor samples. That's a real bugbear issue with me when people send me orchestral tracks and it's like that sounds like a sample. Yes, 5 years ago, even a couple of years ago, people were still sending tracks with average samples. Now there's no excuse anymore. Often it's you can get away with a slightly poor sample with a really good mix. You can hide things in the mix, but things like that are they're ways which I would not take things further. What I also want is when people do approach me, they look at our website and they look at what we've got. So, for instance, if here's an example, we put an album up of surf rock last month. Now, if somebody sends me an album saying, "Oh, I saw you did some surf rock stuff. Here's some surf rock tracks," I'm like, "Well, we've just put an album out. We might do a follow up, but it's not going to be for at least a year and a half, maybe 2 years, depending on usage." So I think it's really important that people just people pay attention to that. Otherwise, they're sending stuff which we don't need. I think doing a bit of research really goes a long way, I find, with me. Just people actually researched you, or at least give the impression that they've researched you. So as I said, we're very keen on really good vocal tracks. But if the stuff that you're sending me is not as good as what we've got, it's going to be a straight no. So, but that doesn't mean that other people won't work with you. But what I always say to people is, this is our benchmark. Yes, so we've got an album called Epic Cinematic, which Mark Doggett did for us, and that was nominated for a Mark Award 2 years ago. And all the tracks on that are wonderful. We've had those used on the BBC. They've been used on Closing D-Day. They've been used with King Charles. So they sound like they are really high end orchestral. So if somebody comes with me with tracks which aren't as good, then it's a with regret. This is where we're at in these sort of levels. Um, Otherwise, if you're going to send stuff out to every single library under the sun, then yeah, okay, fair enough. I can understand people doing that. But if you're going to target the right labels, please check out their websites, check out their music, and think to yourself, is this the right fit? Um, and one thing which I do think is very important to mention is communication. I can't stress how important communication is. A lot of people previously used to think that library music it was not as good as commercial music. However, um, many of the people who write the big hits like library music. So Quincy Jones, who wrote for Extreme. Um, Gary Wallace, one of my composers, he wrote stacks of hits in the 80s. He played at Live Aid. You know, many big hit makers. Sometimes they go into pseudonyms. They write for all the libraries. They've all got tracks on their hard drives, and they're often on tour buses. They just make music all day long. They never stop making music, whether it's commercially released, whether it's for libraries. So it's really important to have people who are really good at communicating. So, for instance, if I tell somebody the brief and I say, I need this track by the end of the month, I shouldn't have to chase you up. Whereas there have been people who they just go quiet and then they say, "Oh, I've had another project come in." Now, that's completely understandable. Life gets in the way, but if you don't communicate with people, that could mean that you are holding the release from being sent out on time. And because we're in 117 countries, so we've got numerous sub publishers. So when we brief our sub publisher on what we've got coming up next, they start briefing their clients on what's coming up next as well. So, for instance, I had a chat with my reps in America fairly recently, and they're saying, "This is what we've got coming up next." So they know that if a big commercial comes in and they need, I don't know, we've got some Grime being recorded right now. At least they know that that is coming in. So it's just really important to constantly let people know. So the just having somebody who's very good at not making any mistakes, delivering all the edits, make sure all the stems are delivered, make sure all the metadata is correct and accurate. Basically, if you don't give me any stress, then it's going to be a lot easier for me to work for you, which is very difficult. I know if you're new and you have questions. I get that. However, it's a lot easier for me to just brief somebody, forget about it, and then I'll get some demos which I'll approve, and then I will get the final version sent through and we can release it. Whether it's anybody who I know is a rookie or whether they are a new composer, the first time I ever work with somebody, I always ask them to send me one edit before they do the whole lot of the edits. The reason is everybody has their own way of working. Other libraries have their own way of working. And as much as I believe the way I set things out is correct, other libraries don't always do that. So, for instance, edit construction, as I said, the last thing I want is to take delivery of a load of tracks and they've all been constructed badly or incorrectly for us. So as a result, I say to people, send me one edit, make sure I'm happy with it, and then go ahead and do all the rest. That's quite important. It is a formula, unfortunately, but that is quite key. That's because I don't want my time being wasted. I don't want their time being wasted, and I don't want the ill feeling, the fact that I've got to go back and say this isn't right. Um, you and I both know this, but the 30-second edits they use 90% of the time, more than anything else. And what I do say to people constantly is, don't make your 30-second edits afterthoughts. It's easy. It's so easy. I remember I used to do movie trailers, and I did a 90-second trailer, few music tracks in it, all the big stars name checked. You can put some nice, funny, cute sound sync lines in, and then you do a 60-seconder where you have to cut a few of those funny lines out, show fewer stars. And then you've got a 30-seconder, which is one track, maybe one star named, and then of that, 5 seconds is telling you what channel it's on and the time it's on. And you're thinking, hang on. You look at your first version, the 90-seconder, and you look at the 30-seconder, you're thinking, I hate this 30-seconder. This is not what I was expecting. And the same applies to library music. When your 30-second track is going to feel like a real bastardized version of your original track. However, that is what's going to get used 90% of the time. So it has to be correct. So just because you had this wonderful introduction in your full mix, don't force it into the 30-second for that reason. You can't think about it's nice for myself. You have to think, where is its use? So when you watch, as we were saying earlier on, when you watch promo commercial, there's no long introductions. So don't give it one. Just make sure your construction for your 30-seconder is absolutely perfect. You get it wrong, then you're going to all that hard work you've done creating the full-length version means it's probably wasted, because all the extra money you're probably going to get from the 30-seconder is not going to come through. And then other things which are just essential is just general housekeeping. For instance, make sure that every single piece of data, let's say data as in audio data, text data, everything is labeled with your name, with a track name, the BPMs and the key. Because I've got so much tracks coming in from all over the world right now. If it's just a track name, or even an initial of the composer, there's a really big chance that things will start to go missing. You have to make things easy for yourself, and basic stuff like that, and be aware as well that we're always juggling priorities on a daily basis. So for instance, last night I was working on going through some new deliverables, whereas this morning I spent several hours working on a brief for an ad agency. So everything else which I was planning to this morning is being shifted to later on today. So as a result, if you sent me a download link of some tracks and it's a WeTransfer link and it's not a premium version, 3 days time that link's gone. So whether you want to pay for a premium one is up to you. There's plenty of freebie ones like Send GB, which gives you I think a week, or have a Dropbox. But you have to understand this. If it takes me a few weeks to come back to your email and it's not there, again, I'm not going to beg for your music, unfortunately. The other thing, which I don't know what your views on this are, but I regularly get composers submitting complete albums to me on spec. Now, my view for this is it's a big no. It's a very big no. Two reasons. Number one, if somebody comes to me and says, we want to do, I don't know, some news music for you, I will say, yeah, great. Let me brief it, because I will know exactly what I want. And if somebody goes, here you go, I've done this for you, well, chances are it's not going to be what I want. So, and I do say to composers, you are welcome to do full albums. However, there's a very big caveat, and that caveat is if the tracks start to sound like they've been done by the same composer, I start to send them back. And unfortunately, just because of how people work in life, you tend to start seeing patterns emerge when whole albums are submitted. So I'm really careful just to ensure that I just don't want stuff being sent on spec. I'd much rather have a conversation with somebody. Send me stuff which is being released elsewhere. It doesn't matter if it's with BMG, Extreme, whoever, APM. I don't care. I can have a listen to it and think, yeah, that album worked really well. You know, I can see you're really good at that style of tracks. Let's do something a little bit different, rather than sending me a complete album, which I might want to reject half the tracks. Or I regularly put several composers on an album just for the variety. We've got a really cool album of trailerized classical coming up, which was done in the US, Australia, New Zealand, and Holland. I'll let you guess where the Dutch track came from, and it's really good to actually listen to all these different tracks because they've all got very different strengths, and you can tell they're from different composers. I think that's really important, because otherwise, I think as a library owner, you become a little bit lazy. I think, which not really what I like to be thought as. I think I also like to give very clear references as well, because sometimes that might come from a brief with the client. It might come from something I've seen on a trailer, or just something which I think just works. I think it's really important to consider that the person who you're speaking to, they know what they want. And but apparently a lot of people are being advised to send complete albums out to people. I'm very aware that if somebody sends 10 tracks, then they've got a bigger chance of getting a usage than 2 tracks. I get that. But ultimately, I want to be known for putting the best music out to our clients. That's the main thing. I don't want to be known for having somebody who just takes any sort of album and puts it out there.
Really good to know. Yeah, because I've noticed some libraries are open to full albums. I think in particular styles of music, especially for when it's the quantity play, right? So the attention music or the reality TV show music, where the clients usually are just a la carte, taking as much as they can from the buffet. And sometimes having a full album in one particular style does seem to be pretty useful, and it's kind of like an instant marketable product ready to go. But I get what you're saying in the more premium areas of our industry for sure. You would not want an album that's going to be used for promos or other more prominent features to all kind of have the same sound and all that kind of stuff. So that definitely makes sense that there would be different situations where you'd be interested in a full album from a composer and other times where you wouldn't. So it's really good to know that you're not particularly interested in a full album from one composer. That's good to know.
I think it does depend. Like our big albums, when you our big albums, the ones which, you know, like say we did an album of Christmas a cappella music, things like that. We got a Halloween vocal track, the neoclassical album, the tradearized classical album, vocal stuff, things like that requires a lot more thinking, a lot more production, a lot more time, a lot more effort. And as a result, you know, I'm very much I don't want things sound the same. Like we often do have the same producers working on a lot of those tracks, but they are very aware that when things start to sound the same, they get rejected. I'm just also talking about submissions. I've had people in the past submit tracks, different tracks. However, the same track name is used with another library. So, say for instance, I don't know, say somebody had a track called "Happy Holiday" by Jesse Jefferson, and He created a completely different track, but named it Happy Holiday by Jesse Jefferson. Now, logic would imply that shouldn't make any difference in terms of there'll be a different tune code, ISRC, ISWC, different waveform. However, there are still plenty of outlets where when you put your track details through, it will be track name, composer, library, catalog number. However, I do know from working in TV myself, frequently people say, "Oh, well, I've got the track labeled as Happy Holiday by Jesse Johnson." Which library was it? Don't know. Google it. Okay. APM. Okay. Right. APM. It was me. So you've got to be really careful about that. Now that is really lazy, to be honest, from the composer's point of view. It's happened a few times with an entire album. Now you've got to be really careful with that. And also, you need to be really careful about reading contracts as well. Like, contracts are not to be messed around with. They are legal documents. It might be a little bit scary reading something which has all this indemnity inside, but it's there for a reason. If it says this track is exclusive, and you've already given that track to another library, you think that I won't find out about it. We will find out because everything is fingerprinted when we use previously AdRev, we now use the MVN for our content ID. So we do get very occasional clashes, which has been a genuine error in part, but we will find out about it. And then we'll have to have a takedown notice, which nobody wants to do. You got to understand this things like AI. Don't breathe the word AI with production music. It is so contentious right now. It is so damaging to the industry that don't think you can do something and get away with it. It's just not worth it. We can lose our MCPS membership. Put it that way. It's very serious. It's really important just to understand what you're getting into. We're very professional in terms of we act by our contracts legally. We expect you to do so as well. And in some cases, not many people who are 18, 19, 20 years old who've never signed a contract in their life. I get that. Share it to a friend. Ideally, somebody who's got a bit of legal understanding. Keep an eye out for things like splits. For instance, I had somebody who English was not his first language, and he just saw the mechanicals that we take 100% mechanicals, and he said, "Oh, you're screwing me over." I'm like, no. Please read the whole contract. He goes, "I read it all." I said, "Yes, we have to collect 100% mechanicals. We have to collect it, but we'll give half of it back to you because only one person can collect it." So, when it comes to doing sync deals, we have to collect it. We are the publisher. However, we are giving half of it back to you. You're not losing out. So it's just really important to have an understanding of basic things like that. And equally to know when you are getting shafted by people. There are libraries out there who will try to take a percentage of your performance rights, your composing rights. It's just you've got to be really careful about what you do. Make sure you don't get exploited. Get advice from other people. The PMA are an incredible organisation with all the work which Morgan does. They have regular coffee meetings. And if you've got friends who are in the industry, chat to them. I speak to composers every single day of my life. The vast majority of my composers are really good friends of mine. When we catch up, we don't talk about work. We just chat about the family, chat about holidays and stuff like that. And it makes life an awful lot easier when you've got that level of trust. So try to, if you've got a question, speak to somebody about it. Don't sign something because once you've signed it, you're legally obliged to it. Um, and it is a great industry, but you just need to be really careful about what you do. Get the right advice from the right people, because everybody's got an opinion. Doesn't necessarily mean it's the right opinion, however.
Absolutely. And this has been essentially just like a masterclass, Ed. It's just been so cool to have you here because I
Well,
might
look,
actually
if
even.
you want a masterclass, there you go. This is the plug. Not for me, I might add, but James Dooley, a friend of mine. I mentioned earlier on, he's very well known for doing the Gladiator theme with Hans Zimmer. He did the Pirates of the Caribbean um, soundtracks. He's done a lot of work on The Simpsons. He is doing a mentorship program. So I will send you the details and however you want to put it out there. But I spoke to Jim yesterday and I mentioned this. I would promote it for him. He's a really good guy. He's had a really tough time in LA with the fires recently. So I really would like to do something to help him out. He's not only one of the best library composers in the industry, he does a lot of stuff for Extreme Bleeding Fingers as well as myself, Physician Music. Um, but he's also worked with Hans Zimmer on multiple compositions. So if you're at the point where you want to improve, you'll probably find it's a really important and valuable class worth doing.
Cool. Well, thank you for the recommendation. Really appreciate it. And just for you, the amount of tips and insights for sure. Anybody watching this video is going to get a lot of value from what you do. So we really want to just thank you for your time today. Obviously, sharing it up, making yourself available to producers and composers that want to get started with sync licensing. I'll also put a link below to Dodge the Bullet Music's website, so you guys can go check out the quality of their music for yourself. You can go see the kind of placements they've received and all the really cool things. I love your guys' promo as well. It's just a really funny, great, impressive, like Western themed promo you have of a lot of your spots. So you guys are doing amazing work over there. Obviously working with some of the best in the business. So I imagine you guys are going to continue to succeed for the coming years as well. So thank you so much, Ed. Really appreciate your time today, buddy. And hopefully we can get you back on the channel another time soon.
Brilliant. Thank you for your time, Jesse. Good to meet you.
You too.